Welcome back, everybody, to Monster Hunter World. In the last episode, we did a lot of tutorial kind of stuff, went over a lot of the general mechanics of the game. This time, I am not in town. I'm in an area called the Training Grounds. You can only get here from talking to the housekeeper cat in your house, the same place where we got our weapon last episode. So this time, we're not going to use the longsword. I have now switched to our next weapon, the great sword, the same weapon that the field team leader uses that has been kind of guiding us. I'm in the training area because I'm going to kind of go over general pros and cons of weapons that I'm going to be using throughout the majority of this Let's Play. So first up, the main one, the big heavy hitter itself, the great sword. And it also has kind of commands, general combos you can use. The great sword is, your mobility is the same regardless if your weapon is sheathed. So like as long as the weapon is put away, our speed will always be the same. The great sword boasts crazy high damage, which I mean you don't think that from that, but with the weapon out, the great sword's mobility is super low, like incredibly low. Our movement is terrible. Our roll is slow, it's very limited, but the great sword has a charge mechanic. You release and it'll do huge damage. And it has 3 levels to this. So another charge attack, on the final charge attack, crazy high damage. You are able to kind of tackle through an attack by just hitting circle, and you can kind of move by using the jump wide slash. It general just mechanics of the game. So the great sword boasts crazy high stun power and damage at the cost of a lot of mobility. That is the general overview, and not even really review, of the great sword. Our next weapon is the longsword, but I already kind of went over that one in the last episode, and I'm using that one mainly as like when we're having real trouble. Next we have the shield and sword. The shield and sword is a unique one. It boasts incredibly high mobility and attack speed.
That focuses on agility and dodge. It's great for beginners.
Like, incredibly good. The shield and sword is a very good weapon. The other cool part is you can actually use items very quickly. It won't do it there because we're already at full health, but it sheaths, unsheaths very quickly. So you sacrifice a lot of damage, but what you gain is crazy high mobility, incredible attack speed, and the ability to rapidly sheath your weapon because you can only use items when your weapon is sheathed. You can't use weapons while it's unsheathed, so that is also a pro of the shield and sword. The next weapon we're going to go over a little bit is the dual blades. The dual blades, I believe, are even weaker than the shield and sword, but they have even higher attack speed.
Flurry of attacks. Demon mode is super strong, but it eats up stamina.
And as our field team leader said, the dual blades have a nice thing where you can enter demon mode, which will slowly deplete your stamina, but our attack speed is even faster and stronger. And you can kind of chain stuff together. It kind of has a sword gauge, sort of like the longsword, but what this does is it actually allows you to use some of the Demon Blades moves without being in demon mode, like that rapid movement slashing attack. So dual blades, very high mobility, like probably the highest mobility of any weapon in the game, but you sacrifice pretty much, I think it's the weakest weapon in the game. So, you know, decent. The hammer, as you can probably guess, it's similar to the greatsword, but it's a hammer. The hammer has even higher stun power, I believe, than the greatsword, but it's faster than the greatsword. The downside is that because it's a hammer, its range is insanely low. Like, you have to be like up on the monster to really do damage. But as you see, the hammer is very strong. It has charge attacks that you can hold. Your stamina will deplete as you do it. You can power charge, which will make it where you'll take kind of minimal knockback, but really good tech, like really good damage. If you hit monsters in the head, it's bound to stun them, make them reel back, or knock them down. The hammer is a main of a friend of mine that used to play this game, so I'm somewhat familiar with the hammer. Next, we have the switch axe, a weapon I actually mained when I first ever played Monster Hunter World. The switch axe has good range and can actually strike upwards to hit enemies that are kind of above you. You can, kind of basic, but the switch axe's big mechanic is that you can actually go into a thing called the sword mode. Like the shield and sword has a similar gauge, it has a similar gauge but not the exact same one. The switch axe has two forms. The axe, as per its name, the switch axe. But if you click R2, it switches into sword mode, which greatly lowers our mobility, similar to the great sword. But we have crazy high, like, physical attacks. And as you attack, a blue light will fill up that sword gauge up below our sharpness bar. And when that gets full, every attack afterwards will kind of unleash a little mini explosion. But when that gauge lowers, so I switch back to axe mode, but there's that little divot in the gauge. If it's below that, we cannot go into sword mode. So right now it's above it, I can go back into sword and keep wailing and get those explosions. If that gauge runs out, you're not really screwed per se, but it won't let you attack, and it forces you back into axe mode. So the switch axe's big thing is you have to kind of balance axe and sword mode in tandem together. Axe has higher reach, better mobility, but sword mode, rapid attacks, and when you fill up that gauge, explosions, which just kind of tick up for more damage as you're already being offensive already. So very decent weapon, not my favorite, but one I used to use. These last two have more in-depth mechanics, so these are going to take a little bit longer to go over. The insect glaive, the main weapon of my significant other, is her favorite weapon. Those little bug icons in our item box, that's what the glaive uses. So the glaive's big cool mechanic,
For getting a monster's attention or creating a distraction.
the glaive has decent mobility and, you know, similar to like longsword, hunting, shield and sword, dual blades. Decent mobility but low damage. It seems kind of slow right now, but the big thing with the insect glaive is that with your insect you can actually hold L2 similar to the slinger, and you can actually shoot a part of a monster, i.e. or this training dummy, and your Kinsect will kind of attack. I'll go over Kinsects later when we finally actually use the glaive, which will be a bit later because I don't want to just slam mechanic after mechanic on you. But now instead of a sword gauge, we have these little 1, 2, 3, and below that is the stamina of our Kinsect. Depending on the part of the monster you attack, you'll get an extract. So because we sent our Kinsect to attack the head, it grabs a red one, which actually ups our damage and increases our combos. So our combos are now actually more complex than they were, and they're stronger. Pretty good. Other areas you can attack, the body will give us white. White increases your attack speed. Not by a ton, but a little bit. And I believe the stronger your Kinsect gets, it actually will increase your attack speed a little bit more. It's not like, oh man, this will be like the fastest attacking weapon in the game. But it does increase it enough that it is a very nice thing to have. The last Kinsect juice is brown. Or orange, sorry, whichever color you choose to go with. I said brown for whatever reason. This one just ups your defense. So this won't do anything for our combat, but if we were to take damage, we would kind of have higher defense and, you know, be more protected. The biggest thing with the insect glaive is that you can actually vault in the air. The only weapon that can do this, by hitting R2 and X up in that top right corner together, you'll vault in the air. And you can actually kind of do aerial combat. You can hit X in the air again to mid-air evade, or you can hit circle and you'll kind of do a vaulting dance. And if you make contact with your attacks, you will continue the aerial combo. Or a stronger attack will give you triangle, where you just come straight to the ground but do a flurry spin. Now that move is different if we don't have the red extract. Having the red extract is kind of a necessity while you use the insect glaive, because it ups your damage and ups all of the power of your combos, making them stronger, better, more complex, and have better flexibility. So that's the insect glaive, a very complex weapon. The charge blade is a weapon I'm not very familiar with, so I'll do my best to kind of explain this one. So the charge blade is similar to a cross between the shield and sword and the switch axe together. So the shield and sword, you know, is
The
similar to
charge
this.
blade
You have a
has
sword
two
and a shield.
forms,
You
sword
can
and
hold
axe.
R2 to defend.
Store
Pretty
up
nice.
energy in a
The
file,
shield and
then
sword can do the
release it
same
through
thing,
the
but it's
axe.
just not as effective. But as you attack, it's very slow right now. These little files that we've had empty files in our game, that will glow red. As you attack, your blade actually stores up energy,
Charged up too much
and
blade
as it
energy.
gets full,
You
it
need
has
to charge so your attacks don't get deflected.
you have too much energy, and every attack, regardless of your sharpness, will always bounce off no matter what. In this state, you have, and this is where it gets complicated, you have to hit R2 and circle together. You'll store all of your file energy into your shield. And then you can keep attacking. And there's a lot of complexity to this. Now, where this weapon switches is when we go into sword mode. If I hold R2 to block and hit triangle, we will switch into axe mode. You can do basic triangle attacks. It's not as powerful or as fast as the switch axe form, but this is the overpowered form of the charge blade. Now, because we fill those vials, if we use circle attacks, it is using a file, but it is releasing all of our energy into our attacks with it, and it switches you back into sword mode. Same thing, put energy back into our shield, and boom. There is more complexity to this weapon, and there is actually a lot of depth to this weapon, but I am not familiar enough with it, and it is definitely not in my even top 5 weapons I ever use. So I am not the person to watch. And really, with every of these weapons, we're only going over a surface face value of said weapons. If you want like in-depth mechanics or anything else, I would recommend looking up other YouTube videos. I believe RX Gaming, when this game came out, had very, very great tutorials on which weapons and like nuances, mechanics, little tips and tricks you can use for every weapon. I personally myself watched that to get better with the switch axe and the longsword myself, and my friends would watch them to get better, like the insect glaive or the hammer, weapons that they ended up using themselves in their playthrough. So yes, we are going to be using the great sword for today's episode, and as I mentioned last time, our big thing we're going to go do right now is we're going to go tackle the Great Jagras. There are other things we have to go over in the game, but we'll save that for future episodes. But for now, and it's going to tell us multiplayer, but again, this is going to be a single player story campaign. We're going to tackle the Great Jagras in today's episode. We have the 2 optional quests. Those will always pop up after you continue an assigned mission if you ever want to redo them, but we don't want to. We want to go straight into the Great Jagras hunt. Things I'm not interested in writing in my daily report. Researchers swallowed whole by Great Jagras. Take it out before I actually have to write it. Same thing. 15 minutes. Faint 3 times, or we fail. And I don't really need to bring any other items with us because we're already set with what we have. I'll put my fire herbs we got last episode away because I really only need potions. I will bring 10 just in case. I'm not the most proficient player with the great sword. It is not a weapon I'm very proficient in. So I will be doing my best to not look as sloppy or as pathetic as possible while using this weapon. So that is our agenda for today, is tackling the Great Jagras. Beating the Great Jagras will unlock new armor, which we'll take a look at the end of the episode. And that's kind of it. We're going to use every weapon for 2 hunts. So longsword was our opening quest, and was our intro for the Jagras and fighting the Kestodon. Great sword will be the Great Jagras and whatever our next story mission
In order for the
is.
scout flies to better track a target monster, we need to keep finding traces of it, like footprints, for example. Good. You're turning up a lot of clues.
So yes. So now that we've collected enough footprints, our scout flies will now automatically track the next trail. It won't track the monster just yet, it's only tracking the trail. So you always want to collect these, and the more you collect, it'll actually give you information on the monster. So these are very important to have. So, and also like collecting these herbs, because even though we already have 10, it's nice to have the herbs because it just stockpiles it for when we're going to need it in the future. So there is the Great Jagras. I am going to continue collecting tracks because I want to fill up the entire bar. That way we'll be able to like upgrade his information. So even though he went that way, he should have left tracks this way, which our scout flies won't track the tracks anymore. It'll track the monster and show it on our minimap. But like I said, I want to level this up because I want his information to be in my journal going forward. Because it will still do that over time anyways, but it will take a bit longer if you just oh, find him and kill him. So you do want to collect the tracks. The points are used for things in the future. They're just not overly helpful to us right now, but they are always good to collect. And even though we're following the monster, it's still good to collect tracks that it does leave behind. So now we're going to try to fight him. This is our first big hunt. Now, like I said, I am not good with the greatsword, so this is going to be very new for me. Yeah, and you can use the, as I mentioned, the tackle will actually get you through an attack. You'll kind of tank damage. But yeah, we're trying to just do huge damage.
Now's your chance.
And this is kind of how the greatsword works. We're going to just hit him with huge damage, knock him down. Wow, I'm actually doing better at this than I thought, if I'm being totally honest. I didn't think the greatsword was going to go this well because it is a weapon I never normally use. Dude, if we just get him in a loop right now. Okay, he didn't knock down that time.
It's better to hold off on your claw until things calm down a bit.
So the Field Hunter did mention a mechanic I have not gone over yet, that it was introduced in Iceborne. I will introduce that later on in the game. It's just I don't want to introduce it just quite yet. Alright, now we took some damage.
Don't forget you can guard too.
Oh, and the greatsword can guard. I actually totally forgot about that. Now there's a cool mechanic where you can actually mount monsters, but it is a little tough. Yeah, we don't really have a ledge to do it, so I'm going to try to show it off, because you can mount monsters. Yeah.
You've mounted the monster.
So this big thing here is that if you jump off a ledge and hit a monster in the air, you'll build up a hidden counter that allows you to mount the monster. We stab it until we eventually knock it down. So when it moves, when it starts kind of roughing around to get you off of its body, that little yellow circle will glow red. You want to either hold R2 to brace to reduce the stamina depletion, or just move to a different sector of the body. Once you do enough damage, you'll do a big finishing attack, and it will knock the monster clean to the ground, letting you just get huge damage. And we still got his tail. Nice.
Chances are it'll retreat to its nest to recuperate.
Now, one big thing with Monster Hunter is that you do not ever see the monster's health. You have to kind of read its movements. So obviously we did enough damage. The Jagras one is running away, and it's limping. That's how you know it's almost dead. Also, because we collected enough tracks and upped our research on it, on the mini-map, it actually is shooting out kind of a skull icon. That's also how you know the monster is almost dead. If we did not collect enough tracks and just fought him right away, we would not have gotten that. It would have just been like, oh, he's running away, and you would have known he's almost dead. But now you also have an indicator on the map that he is almost dead, because skull. And this time with the greatsword is honestly going way better than I had even projected. So monsters will run away and try to go to sleep. So that is one thing as well. But wow, he was one hit from dying. So there you go. We have taken down the Great Jagras with a weapon I never ever use. My significant other's brother, he mains the greatsword, so he's good with the weapon, quote, as good as people kind of say they are with weapons. I assume he's really good, because using a greatsword is so slow. Like, how do you even really master a weapon like that? But yeah, that went very well. I was kind of worried going into that the greatsword hunt was gonna go honestly kind of poor. It went way better than I had expected, so I'm satisfied with those results. I mean, our chest piece is giving us an attack boost. I mean, it's only 3 attack, but that 3 attack does still make a significant difference in the damage you kind of do overall in an entire hunt. So we will be using the greatsword for another hunt, so this isn't our first. This isn't going to be a one and done, like, oh wow, we crushed it with the greatsword one time, you know what, now we're done, undefeated with a greatsword, boom, baby, in the records, we're unbeatable. Okay, so now we have a cutscene.
I think we got a lead.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Let's check it out. There's our mark. Something's got him agitated. Look over there. What in the heck is that? I've never seen anything like it.
You think it's from AzurePKK?
Okay, I'm actually incredibly sorry. I think my capture card kind of mucked up there. So we lost a little bit of footage. I'm very sorry that that happened, but pretty much at the end of that clip, there was a piece of AzurePKK that kind of just showed up that was blocking the PKK monster. And yeah, we're pretty much just going to figure out how Azure is affecting the environment. So again, I'm very sorry for that. But we have completed the quest, the Great Jagras hunt. Obviously, we got some Jagras items. It's standard stuff, kind of like last quest. So as we attacked Great Jagras, we did break off parts of its body or even damage parts of it that soften it, that make it more susceptible to higher damage. Because of those things in tandem, we got bonus rewards. We got a Great Jagras claw, cool, and a main, cool. Not anything revolutionary, but little rewards for breaking parts of the monster. And standard stuff, our hunt rank goes up. Because we filled up that entire bar of the Great Jagras, we actually can report to the ecological research team and we'll get more information on the Great Jagra. So that's why it's always cool to collect tracks, because you can kind of fill out more information on the monster you want to hunt or are currently hunting. Because we'll be fighting the monsters kind of again, but I won't be showing every fight with the same monsters again and again and again and again.
I see.
So you think you found something that'll lead us to AzurePKK? Well, I'd send some researchers out right now, but not with a pissed off PKK hanging around. PKK territory. That's pretty deep in the forest. Well, we'll be better equipped to take it on. Once our team from the resource center is done rebuilding the forest camp, once it's ready, we make our move.
Going?
Until then, we do everything we can to help them get that camp up and running. Let's get to it. So the game is opening
Once
up.
the camp is set up, you can go after that PKK.
So yeah, I am going, we're not going to talk to the main mission thing right now. We're going to go over and find out what our information on Great Jagras gave us.
Yes?
A hunter from the 5th, are you? Then you must have finished your first quest. This is the ecological research headed up by yours truly. Tell me, did you find any monster data out there? Tracks, caches, that sort of thing? Data tells us a story about the monsters, an elaborate and interesting one at that. Your job in the field team is to track the monsters, collect data, and advance the study. Our job is to take that data, analyze it, and compile our findings for the commission. What we learn helps you out in the field too, so you see, we need each other.
I'll be here.
Drop by here anytime, I'll show you what we're working on. So, what is it? And we got our field guide upgrade. That's going to go over research levels, collecting tracks, basic stuff. So what this does is, because we collected level 1, we have one page of Great Jagras. We don't know its known habitats, but we have characteristics and useful information, which is pretty standard, but we got the physiology. So we can see that its stomach is a weak point, its front feet are a weak point, and its head is breakable and a weak point. So weapons have slashing, blunt, or coating, or I guess arrow damage. So something like the longsword is most effective against its stomach and head, where, I mean, really everything is 3-star effective against the stomach and the head, but every weapon is only 2-star viability against its front feet. Elements. The Great Jagra is weak to fire. 3 is technically the normal highest. Some monsters hit 5, but it's very specific situations. Not affected by water, and then decent to thunder and ice, and not very weak to dragon, but still weak. Ailments, poison, sleep, paralysis, blast, and stun. All status effects we'll see on various different kinds of weapons, and it's weak to all ailments. So, again, as you collect more tracks, you'll see like rewards and just more detailed information as you go along in the game. If you're ever like, oh man, I want to fight the Great Jagra, like what's he weak to? Oh, fire. I'll make a fire build to fight him. So yeah, that is going to end this episode here. I don't want the episodes to go super long, especially since we had that weird hiccup and lost a few seconds of footage, or like about like upwards of a minute. At the very end of the video, I'll kind of show the armor, like kind of like not talk over it, but just show you all the armor pieces and just show you the Great Jagras armor that we've unlocked for the Hunter and the Palico. And I will stick that at the end of the end slate, and I'm still going to craft it, even if we might not use it, just to have every single armor in the game. So next episode, we'll have the Great Jagras armor, and if there are better pieces more viable to what we currently are running, then we'll be using that. And then anything I gather off, you know, camera, then I will go over that at the beginning of the next episode. So other than that, I will see you guys next time for Monster Hunter World. Till then,